I used to think that the only key person to setting up the content studio was that managing editor, was that person who can interpret a brand's needs and then assign them to what I would call brand journalism. But I don't think that anymore. When I launched Politico Studio with Nick Yeager, he taught me a lot about the need for more of a creative director, because it is an advertising product, and it's not that I was wrong about brand journalism, but I think that they are equally important. So now I would say, when you think about the budget that you have for staff, for full-time staff, I would devote half of the first two hires you should make are this managing editor, this editorial lead, and an in-house creative director. Once you have those two people locked in, you could outsource a great deal of the rest of the tactical that you have to do for any given project. Well, that's a lot of what's so hard about staffing each individual project and executing it, is that if a publisher can't afford a whole staff, and even if you could, think of it this way, even if you could afford or can afford one writer, that writer is not an expert in these topics that each individual brand wants the most expert journalist to write for them. That's the part that's so difficult, is that if you're really doing campaign, if you are a publisher that is a general interest publisher, then that's pretty hard. So you're going to have lifestyle people, you're going to have business people, you're going to have science people. That's a broad array. I think that even publishers like at Politico, where you think, oh, well, we have a specialized audience that's interested in politics, but then we had the energy vertical and the transportation vertical and the cybersecurity vertical. And just because they were both speaking to Politico readers, the Politico readers are each experts on their topics. So they run the Department of Transportation. That person is genuinely reading Politico. You can't give them a general interest writer. And how is that person possibly going to get up to speed on a topic which by its interest is going to be read by the most expert person in the space? And that's why I say that it's more nimble and more workable to have this network that doesn't work for you every day, where you can choose the right person for the job every day. Well, I think that person is the one that is going to find the right person to assign it to and is going to manage that person. So here's another thought that I have, and I didn't say it on stage, is that studios are often hiring people earlier in their careers. I mean, partly they're more affordable, but I think here's a role that I think is strongly suited to a Gen Xer. And I have a few reasons for saying that. One is that they are the last generation to be trained in traditional media. So for example, when I got out of college, I went to Time Inc. and they paid me to learn for 8 years how to be a good reporter. And that kind of an education, I think even at Time Inc. doesn't happen anymore. And so that person was trained as a real journalist, but Gen Xers grew up with technology, so it's not as if they're not, on social media all the time, they totally are. And then at the same time, because that person has a 20-year career or a 25-year career, they know so many contacts. And I think that one thing that my partner, Nick Yeager, who I just mentioned, appreciated when we were working together at Politico was how many contacts I had and how nobody else had to worry about this. Because if I didn't have the right person for the job, I knew the person who knew the right person for the job. And because we all knew each other, they were more inclined to say yes to a brand content project. Whereas before, if any old person asked them, they might be like, I'm not going to write brand content for, an energy company or something that they might consider dicey. And they often consider brand content to be dicey all on its own. It's an understanding of what happened to journalism and why it's happening. I think that there's two kinds of former journalists or struggling to stay journalists. There are people who are stuck in the grief phase, and then there are people who just moved along. If you understand it well enough, I think that you're either going to end up saying, oh, well, I understand it, I can live with it, I'm going to find a way to live with it. Or, understanding it, you could be angry. I mean, you either go to grief or anger. And I appreciate that. I've had all those feelings, but I think that when you're trying to zip along with a native advertising project that is tough to execute, probably has a short deadline, a lot is at stake, it's a tough relationship to negotiate, I don't need to deal with one more thing, and that is the grief of this journalist. That's not my problem. I know that it's true that, as I said on stage, that some publishers are closing their custom content studios because it's too hard and it's not profitable enough and they don't see it scaling. And they're right, it is too hard right now and it's not very profitable right now, and I can't quite see how, by definition, custom content doesn't scale. But I think that is the wrong approach. If they're trying to close it down and think it through and see what happens and then start up again, which I suspect they are, then that's a perfectly, proper way to address it. But I think that we're all going to have to go in this direction because I don't see any other direction. I think that this editorial, difficult to do, doesn't scale type of native advertising is with us to stay simply because we can't interrupt people anymore with something that they don't want to engage in. We can only serve them the kind of content that they can choose, and that once they've made the choice to engage with it, they're happy that they did it because a brand sponsored it, and with that greater budget, it was special. And so they have to stick with it. Please stick with it, because if you don't stick with it, then we can't pay for media. And if we can't pay for media, we don't have an independent media. Well, agencies are in a tough spot. They're in a really tough spot. I feel for them. A lot of people in communications and marketing used to be in PR agencies, if not advertising agencies. And they too know the pain of their business model being disrupted. The entire reason that brand content exists is because journalists' industry was disrupted. All these industries are being disrupted. Ad agencies are in a tough place because if they move strongly in this direction, they're affirming the thing that's going to reduce their profitability. It's going to be more work for fewer profits. That's just how it's going to go. I think that we should all just affirm what's happening. You don't deny it. You don't defer it. I think that we should affirm it and then fix it rather than fight against it. And I think a lot of people in ad agencies are fighting for the past to still be the present, which it isn't. And I think there is a route to their continued existence, if not to thriving again. But I think it does require a certain amount of acceptance of what's happened in our industry. The perfect project would be that there is an editorial lead at the brand who understands native. And not that many brands have somebody like that yet. They often have marketers, and they may not have a sort of a managing editor function yet. The biggest brands do. But you have somebody in-house who really understands that and who is connected to the budget that is getting bought. If it's the marketing team, sometimes it goes automatically to the agency, whereas that editorial lead might be at the communications department, which is why I was saying that you can't overlook the communications department. It could be the source of a lot more budget than you think. And so it would be, the ideal team would be a person from the brand who understands it, working closely with the content studio who understands what the goals of the campaign are and can articulate them well, and then who is strong enough to oversee what the content studio is creating so that you're working in tandem throughout, and then at the end, the result is what everyone expected, and then it succeeds. I think that the way that publishers can successfully sell native to brands who are not very well versed in it yet is to show the brand or the agency representing the brand examples of successful native in their peer group. It is much easier to make somebody picture something that their competitor has done well. And on the one hand, you might say that if my competitor did that with this publisher, I don't want to jump on the bandwagon and, imitate them. But at the same time, when you're just trying to describe a concept, it's hard to bring it to life in the mind of someone who hasn't seen and experienced it yet. So I think that showing them a successful campaign in the same space does help them to picture it and imagine themselves doing something similarly successful. I think in the sales pitch it's important to have an editorial understanding and to show examples. Everybody loves examples. Everybody loves case studies. I haven't gone to a pitch meeting from a publisher yet where I walked away happy without a case study. That's what I want to see. I want to see the most interesting pieces that they've most recently executed. Those don't have to be in the same space as my company's industry, but they can be anywhere, and then I can picture having an interactive data visualization like that one, and then ask myself, do I have enough data to feed that? Or if I don't, maybe I would work with the publisher to commission a research study, and that would generate the data, and then I could have it. It gives your thoughts wings. I think that we really underestimated how hard it is for a sales team at a publisher to incorporate this creative agency element, to launch it, to know how to work with that internal team. When is it the right use of their time to go to a meeting? When is that a waste of their time that they need to get their own work done? How do you find them? How do you staff them? What do you do with them? I think this is very painful. I don't think that we appreciated it. And now we know how hard it is, and now I think a lot of people are feeling a certain amount of despair because, as successful as the most successful native ad studios have been, these are in the single millions of dollars. This is not breakout money. This is not in any way programmatic, of course. And I think everybody misses the days where you could just sell a big old advertising campaign and then you could go home and have a drink. And so this is much harder, but it's this new world order where we have to chase all of these people wherever, whatever channels that they are dwelling, and we have to serve them experiences that are worth their time and choice, and this is what it takes. I think that a publisher can create successful relationships with brands that endure, and that's what I was talking about on stage, is when I've been on both the publisher side and the brand side of successful relationships, what went into them? It was often relationship building with individuals, and it's with the right individuals. It's with people who understand what they can get out of native, how it can satisfy their needs to get a particular message out, their needs to share information with particular audiences in these ways. And I do think that all of the experience that sales teams have in building those relationships that they've been doing for years and years and years, this is the strongest muscle that they have. If they can apply it to different people within the brands so that they'll be selling native, then I think they'll succeed. I think that the rocky transition was when sales teams who were used to selling to the agencies, and that was easier and more automatic, and we were used to it and everything. Now they're saying, oh no, I have to put so much work into this new paradigm where if I do make that sale, it's going to be a smaller sale. And it might just be a one-off. And as I said, it's like you're launching a startup. Each project is like a startup. So if you only get to do it once, it's like you launched an entire company that then folded. And so I think there's, a tension inside of sales teams. Do they really want to support the efforts of the creative studio? That's probably why some publishers have closed their studios. They're saying our sales teams don't want to spend their energy on this. There's still enough revenue to be had from digital advertising. But I think we must recognize that is always going down. It's just always going down. And so I don't think that the profits will be there in short order, and we have to expect that. When you do it right, and when it is a hit, then you usually have a repeated relationship with the brand. And then look at what the New York Times and Rethink Atlantic Studio have accomplished. They really have remade their businesses. And the great thing about marketers is marketers love to write about marketing. So the kind of press that they've gotten for their advertising innovation is very satisfying. And it just leads to more success and it leads to more innovation. I do believe that native advertising is going to be the source of the most creative advertising going forward. I think that, that Cannes Lion will be won, the Grand Prix will be won and won and won by brand studios in the future.